Hello crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I'm here with a video featuring a card kit from Fabrika Decoru. I don't know how to say it, I'm sorry, but they're sold at Cat Scrappiness, and I did receive this from Cat. So the card kit comes with some die cuts, with a sheet that you can cut apart, a bunch of different pattern papers, and those like button things. You know, they look like little buttons that you would put on your shirt, but they don't have the button back. I don't know if there's a special name for it. I did really like that it came with the die cuts. It is the cool teen set. There are a few different card kits though, and they are pretty reasonably priced. They are $14.99, and I'm going to make 16 cards today, but there's at least 2 full sheets of pattern paper that I don't use, and so you could certainly, I think, get at least 20 cards out of any kit. My cards are a little simple, but I think that suited well to what my idea was. I basically was intending to make these for teen boys. I do donate a lot of cards to Cards for Hospitalized Kids, and I think it's really easy for them to get cards for little kids and more feminine cards in general, but I bet I'm willing to bet that they could use a few more teen boy cards every now and then. So I decided to pick out my favorite die cuts, the ones that I thought would appeal most or work out the easiest to go with the different pattern papers, and basically what I thought that the teens might like the most. I did use a lot of the like sports and activity sets or images for sure. And once I have all of those picked out, I'm going to start assembling my cards. I do not have measurements for my cards this time. I did have a few sketches here that I used a few of them sort of, and that was mostly just because they were still on my desk from a previous project. I made a video for Newton's Nook where I did 5 cards from using the same stamp set, and that's what those were from. So as you might be able to tell if you know when that video came out, that this voiceover took me a remarkably long time to do. So there are 2 of each pattern paper. They are double-sided, and they are 8x8, which means that on one piece of 8x8 paper, you can die cut 2 backgrounds for an A2 size card. You can cut it in half to 4x8, and then cut it down to 4x5 1/4. So I was able to use the backside of the paper. So once you cut down to that 5 1/4, then what would be left would be over 2 inches of paper still, and that would be the backside, so it would probably coordinate really well. And so I did that a lot, where I used that little bit of extra to maybe be my focal point image. And so you're going to see my first 2 sets of cards are really similar, where I use that sort of like comic book paper background. And when I was using that comic book paper background, I thought that mounting my focal point on a piece of white paper really helped it to pop out a lot. So I actually am going to do a bit more layering than I've done in the past. A lot of times when I work with pattern paper, I don't put a layer of cardstock in between, but I felt like it made a lot of sense with the busier papers that this particular collection had. I'm going to use my distressed edge dies, distressed edge circles. There are rectangles and squares and ovals from Cat Scrappiness quite a bit on here, because I just thought like they added a little bit of interest with but still kept the card pretty simple. I'm also going to use a stamp set from Create a Smile Stamps. I cannot remember the name of it. It has something to do with you. I will leave a link in the video description. But what's nice about it is a really simple stamp set that includes you in a lot of different fonts and styles and sizes, and then all of the like sub parts of the sentiment in like the same sort of plainer font. So like, you are special, you rock, things like that. And so it's a stamp set that I find myself reaching for over and over again. I'm also using the Never Ending Circles from Cat Scrappiness for the circles that you see here. Obviously, any circle dies will do just fine. I will stamp all my sentiments in black and VersaFine ink. I just felt like the black went well with most of the different pattern papers. And again, trying to keep it simple. Here, what I'm doing by cutting these little chunks of cardstock is basically adding dimension. So I'm not using foam tape. You certainly could, and that would probably be way faster and easier. But I have just found that I can use my scraps of cardstock I like layer them too thick and use that instead of foam tape. And it doesn't save that much, but it can be pretty convenient. You don't have to run out to the craft store to get foam tape or throw it on your order or anything like that. So that's kind of nice. And it adds a really like subtle amount of dimension because 2 layers of cardstock is not very thick, but it's thick enough to add some interest. So it doesn't add a lot of bulk to your card, which is kind of nice. And another little like eco-friendly point about it is that I believe my card would be fully recyclable because when you add foam, you can't put that in the paper recycling anymore. So when I'm creating really simple cards like this, and not that all my cards are, like if I'm putting gems on them, they're obviously not going to be recyclable, but in this case, they do stay that way. So I have my first 8 cards already, and part of that was from keeping things crazy simple. But again, I think that that's appropriate for a teen boy. Also, did you notice the advertisement page at the beginning? On the back were those images you could cut apart. So I thought that was really clever of them. So rather a lot of times that first page, whether it's in a paper pad or whatever, it's just something you throw in the recycling. But here, because they chose to put images on the back, you can still use that piece of pattern paper. So here's a full 8x8 sheet, and I'm showing you how I cut all of them. I actually cut them to 5 1/4 first, and then down to 4. So, it was 5 1/4 by 8. Then I cut that in half, so it would be 4 by 5 1/4. Here I'm also cutting little 3x3 squares, and I again believe that is pulled in from the sketches. I don't always save all my sketches in a book, although that might be a good idea. I just find that I'm not particularly good at remembering to go back to a physical thing. So I mostly save my sketches on Pinterest. And so I'll link you to my sketch board on Pinterest in case you want somewhere to start in terms of collecting a couple of clean and simple sketches that you think you would use with pattern paper if you're into that kind of thing, which I assume you are if you're watching this video. Pattern paper cards can be really fun to make for sure. And a lot of us have some old pattern paper in our stash that we could really go through. Here, I'm basically trying to create a really simple card with a banner to ground the focal point of the card. But when I cut a banner, I usually just cut down the center and then I cut in from the sides, and it usually creates a little bit more even of a look than if I were to try to cut directly from the sides. I always make them wonky that way. So cutting down the center really helps. You could, of course, use banner dies. I just find that takes a lot more time, and sometimes it's totally worth it, and I like doing it, and I like that extra detail. But this time, I decided not to. I do prefer to glue down things like the banner and then turn it over and trim them off rather than trying to line them up on the sides. And that's just more of a personal problem, I guess, that I have with not being able to always line things up straight and perfect. So there were a lot of different emoji smiley faces in the card kit. And I am not that old, but I'm not a big emoji user, and I feel like I know what they all mean. I feel like a winky face is could be interpreted in a different way. Like sometimes a winky face is meant more like in a flirty sort of way, which is not really what I'm going for here. But I don't know. Like, I think they're all going to hopefully just be interpreted as like kind of just fun. But yeah, it's something to consider about all the little emojis that were in here. They're kind of fun, but be careful because sometimes the kids, well, I guess that makes me sound old. Whatever. That they mean something else to them than they do to us sometimes. But anyway, I did try to use up a few of them because I thought that they were relatively cute. I like that they went with like speech bubbles. So I tried to pick the safest ones. There I'm using a sketch again, but using them pretty loosely and interpreting them for the size of pattern paper that I have. But like that one had rounded corners, so I just took out my super old school corner rounder and used that. I will never get rid of my corner rounder. I used to be like obsessed and round the corner of every card I made. Like back when I first started card making, you rounded corners all the time. That was definitely like the thing because it added a lot because that was like before there were dies. So we had to do things to make our paper interesting. On the sides, there wasn't stitched rectangles when I first started, or like all the, there's so many other stitched and scalloped and all that jazz. And so we would round corners and we would like distress the edges. So we'd put ink around the edges of like all kinds of things to make them more interesting. So if you remember that time in card making, leave me a comment below or let me know what your like the like sort of vintage way that you like what did you used to do before dies, if you have been a card maker as long as I have. Okay, so there, instead of doing the banner, I just like cut a diagonal edge, and that can be like a fun way of adding a little interest too. And I'm not going into super detail with any of these cards. Like I mentioned, I don't know what the measurements of them all were. I probably should have paid better attention to that, but by the time I got around to recording this video, I'm just going to be perfectly honest with you. I did not have the cards anymore. I'd already sent them off for donation, but I still thought I would show you what the kit looks like because I do think if you like to donate your cards, this is a kit where it's a little bit unique and can sort of fill a niche. It's kind of hard to find pattern paper that suits teens well, or even if you just know a lot of teens, and you're like, what am I supposed to use for them? What do the kids think is cool? And I don't know, maybe the kids don't think this is cool. I'm not a kid anymore, but I don't know. I just hoped that some people would find it useful and also to just like see a bunch of cards. I will make sure that there's a blog post with this one because I know it can be helpful, even if it's not a very detailed blog post, to just see all the cards. And maybe that's all you want and you wish I would shut up. But, then go to the blog post. That'll help you out. I did use all like A2 size backgrounds for all of these. I find it really easy to just be able to cut up a bunch. And I use really thick pattern paper. It is from Michaels though. It's the Michaels Recollection 110 pound. And I find that it's thick enough that if you leave it showing, it still looks good. If you use really thin cardstock for your card bases, I think you can kind of obviously you can tell, but it takes something away. This is pretty thin pattern paper too. I will say that. It's not like, super thin. I've definitely encountered thinner, but having that weight of the cardstock behind it to me can add a little bit to the card, and then I don't mind so much if I show more white space. Anyway, as I get towards the last couple cards, like I said, I'm making 16 cards today. I'm really trying to use my scraps. I am creating more scraps by die cutting than I would if I wasn't, like if I was just using square shapes, but I'm totally fine with that. I think that, in fact, that can be a good thing because I'm adding more interest with the die cuts. but like the little piece up there in the corner where I cut the distressed circle out of it, I'm not going to be able to use that anymore. But when I do see those little strips, I'm like, oh, that's a banner, or oh, I can put my sentiment on that, and I'll hold on to those little pieces. So I do keep changing up I use the You Rock sentiment a lot because I thought it was really generic, and that was kind of what would work out well because I wanted these cards to be able to be used for whatever they needed to be by the organization. And, like maybe they need a birthday card for somebody, and hopefully that'll still work. And you just change up the message a bit or something. Anyway, that's it for my cards today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you are interested in more crafting videos, such as card kit and 6x6 paper pad tutorials, I know those are pretty popular on my channel. Please subscribe. I will always be sharing more of those. And then I just like to mix in fun cards in between. And you can look at the video description below to find links to this card kit and any other resources that I mentioned, including the jokes that I put on the inside of the cards before I send them. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Have an awesome day. Bye.